Sectarian violence runs wild in Iraq.
It's been a bloody 24 hours.
Hunger in America on the rise.
Food insecurity has been rising in the country despite an otherwise strong economy.
Bush team works to calm port sale complaints.
Congress needs to be more involved.
And good morning, everybody. I'm Christopher Glenn with the CBS World News Roundup. Another massive angry demonstration at the Samarra Mosque, one of the holiest of Shiite Muslim shrines, destroyed by a bomb yesterday. The sectarian violence is spreading now, getting bloodier. CBS News correspondent Kimberly Dozier in Baghdad.
Iraqi police across the country keep finding bodies of murdered Sunnis. Here in the capital, there were up to 98 so far that have been discovered, mostly killed overnight. There was a pile of 40 in one spot. Now we're also hearing reports that factory workers on a bus in Bakuba were marched off by gunmen and more than 40 killed there.
3 Iraqi journalists were murdered as they covered the mosque bombing in Samarra. A leading Sunni Muslim organization is blaming top Shiite clerics for fanning the tension, and Iraq has canceled all police and army leaves and extended curfew hours. At least 40 people are dead after the snow-laden roof of a market in Moscow collapsed. CBS News reporter Bill Gasparini has the latest.
Most of the dead and injured were traders preparing their fruit and vegetable stalls. Officials say the death toll would have been higher if the collapse had occurred a short time later. Moscow's mayor has ruled out terrorism as the cause of the accident.
Rescue workers say they no longer are hearing sounds from beneath the rubble, but sniffer dogs indicate there are still survivors. The Bush administration is trying to ease the uproar over selling control of American ports to an Arab company. Live to correspondent Dan Raviv, who brings us up to date.
A Senate committee this morning will get a public briefing from some of the decision makers who cleared that transaction, while Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice visits the United Arab Emirates, an ally against terrorism, she says, adding the deal was fully reviewed.
It's a very thorough process.
But Richard Pearl served on an intelligence panel that reviewed foreign takeovers.
The committee almost never met.
Saying that wasn't serious post-9/11 scrutiny. Another Republican, Susan Collins, chair of the Senate Homeland Security Committee, says she wasn't briefed until 2 days ago.
And I'm just baffled by that.
Reporting live, Dan Raviv, CBS News.
The South Dakota State Senate has okayed a bill imposing some of the strictest abortion limits in the country, but CBS News legal consultant Andrew Cohen tells us even if it should become state law, it's going to have problems in the federal courts.
It will immediately be challenged in federal court, where the judge will essentially be required to block its enforcement because it's contrary to the law of the land that, at least for now, recognizes abortion rights.
The reality of hunger in America continues to grow as more people seek what's called food assistance. Correspondent John Hartje reports.
More than 25 million Americans turned to charity for food last year, an increase of 9 million people in just 4 years. At America's Second Harvest, Doug O'Brien says many who need food aid have income, but not enough to feed their families.
36% of the households served by food pantries, soup kitchens, and emergency shelters have at least one adult employed.
And many who resort to food banks and soup kitchens get food stamps. But O'Brien says the government benefits are not enough. And this study was done before last fall's hurricanes forced many to seek food assistance. John Hartje, CBS News, Washington.
Time to shine. Sasha Cohen skates for the gold at the Winter Olympics in a few hours. CBS's Steve Futterman is in Torino.
Sasha Cohen has a narrow lead entering tonight's competition, 3/100ths of a point over Russia's Arina Slutskaya. They're expected to battle it out for the gold. It's a classic matchup of two very different styles, the more artistic and graceful Cohen against the athletic and powerful Slutskaya.
It's 4 minutes after the hour. A military judge has cleared a Marine swim instructor of any wrongdoing in the drowning of a recruit last year, prompting cries of outrage from the victim's family. Correspondent Jim Krasula covered the court-martial in Parris Island, South Carolina.
The not guilty verdict left the parents of 19-year-old Marine recruit Jason Tharp shaking with anger and despair, choking back tears.
It feels like our son just got killed again. We have to go through this all over again.
After holding up a picture of his son, John Tharp threw down a folder containing his court-martial notes and disgustingly yelled, quote, "There's no justice at Parris Island." Jim Krasula, CBS News, Parris Island, South Carolina.
Teachers in Durham, North Carolina will be able to get free graduate degrees from Duke University beginning this fall. The program, aimed at improving the city's public schools, will offer advanced degrees in teaching and intensive Spanish language training. Time in the World News Roundup now is 5 minutes after the hour.
This is Charles Osgood. I remember from my boyhood a cowboy song called I'm Headin' for the Last Roundup. Well, for Christopher Glenn, whose distinctive voice has graced the CBS World News Roundup this morning and every morning, lo these many years, on the CBS Radio Network, this is the last Roundup. He is retiring from CBS News after 35 distinguished years on radio and television. A generation of Americans remembers Christopher Glenn from more than 5,000 episodes of In the News, a CBS News television broadcast for children, which he began in September of 1971.
In the news, the Watergate Four received jail terms. This week, 4 former top Nixon associates learned how long they may have to spend in prison. They were found guilty for their parts in the Watergate cover-up. In the News.
In the News ran for 13 years. Chris also anchored a more in-depth broadcast for kids.
This is 30 Minutes, the CBS News magazine for young people with Christopher Glenn and Betty Ann Bowser.
Chris knew that the best way to tell a story to children was to make it as clear, simple, and straightforward as possible. And it turns out that's always the best way to give the news, to adults too, however complex the story may be. Nobody could do that better than Chris. He covered space throughout his long career.
This is Christopher Glenn reporting the year's developments in space and science that made news in 1962.
Even on that sad, cold morning in 1986 at the Kennedy Space Center, when the shuttle Challenger exploded after launch, and it fell on him to tell millions what he was seeing.
A report relayed through the flight dynamics officer.
A terrible thing.
The vehicle has exploded.
A terrible thing. Debris falling out of the sky, falling slowly, painfully, tragically slowly toward the Atlantic Ocean just a few miles offshore.
Chris Glenn has won just about every award there is in this business. His CBS colleagues not only have admired and respected him professionally, we wanted to sound like him. We even envied his time checks.
And the time on the Roundup, 6 minutes after the hour.
Even David Letterman took to imitating him.
Time on the Roundup, 6 past the hour.
On that slightly incorrect time check, Chris, on behalf of all of us here at CBS Radio, you are the best, and we wish you the best.
Charlie, I'm flabbergasted. What can I say? Thank you so much for that. It's really, really nice. I appreciate it. All right, more news now. Mudslide. Rescuers had to rescue some rescue workers in the Philippines after they got stuck in the soft mud that buried a village. The death toll now stands at 122 there, but it's expected to rise to over 1,000. Let's have a look at how Wall Street's shaping up this morning. S&P futures down 0.5 point. The time now, 8 minutes after the hour. So how do we really feel about the BlackBerries, email, and all the other gizmos that keep us wired to our jobs? Reporter Adrienne Mitchell has been talking to workers in the nation's capital.
Experts say technology that was supposed to make our lives easier hasn't. These people in Washington agree.
Too much multitasking.
That's a double-edged sword. In most cases, it should quicken your day. In other cases, it actually adds burden.
It can slow you down if you get distracted with all the emails.
John Challenger of the outplacement firm Challenger Gray & Christmas says always connected employees can actually be slower because they never concentrate on just one task. Experts say managers can counter that by giving workers more control and flexible schedules. Adrienne Mitchell for CBS News, Washington.
A ban on drinking alcohol, smoking, or gambling at a Christian college in Michigan may finally be coming to an end. Cornerstone University has set up a panel to see whether the restriction should be lifted. The Baptist College, founded 65 years ago, dropped the ban on student dancing 18 months ago. When you've just hit the biggest jackpot ever, do you keep working or quit? CBS News correspondent Lee Frank's been checking with the Powerball 8 in Nebraska.
Now that he has won more than $15 million, Michael Terpstra is thinking of quitting his job at the meat processing plant, but not quite yet.
If we would leave, it might actually hurt the plant, and it would hurt the people that we like. So until there is a replacement, I'm going to be there to help them out.
3 of the 8 winning workers at the meat processing plant retired soon after finding out they are now multimillionaires. Lee Frank, CBS News, Lincoln, Nebraska.
And as this broadcast comes to a close, time for me to say farewell. I've been doing the work I love for nearly 50 years now. Honored to have done it at this great news-gathering organization the last 35. But retirement is beckoning, and it's a wrap for me. Not, though, until I say one more time, and proudly, that's the World News Roundup. I'm Christopher Glenn, CBS News.